Hi and welcome to another video on the Mixed Reality Toolkit. Today we're going to cover the new Release Candidate 1 upgrade, what it means and what's changed, so you can be fully aware. So in this session we're going to quick overview what it means to be the Release Candidate 1, how you go about upgrading for the existing beta, if you're currently working on the whole toolkit, how about to go upgrading from there to what the new way of the world is, couple of the new features and what it is, and a very quick highlight of what to expect from the full release that's coming soon. So here we're obviously going to focus on the actual toolkit itself, a sort of a change up from our previous videos, and we're looking at what's been enhanced, what's been changed, what new features have been added, things that have been moved from the original beta. There's been a lot of restructuring and change things around to better compartmentalize the project and have it so that it works better going forward, especially with the new features that are added in this release. So those toolkit features that we start off with, there's a lot of profile updates, a load of new helpers and things. The big thing obviously is with the HoloLens 2 launch is that we're having new hand tracking and eye tracking features that are brought in. But be warned is that the release candidate itself, it does require you to be on the latest Windows 10 Insider release. So that's the 19H1, which is hopefully, fingers crossed, can be delivered by the end of May. And also a preview of the latest UWP SDK. This is because it takes advantage of some of the new features and things that are predominantly only in HoloLens 2. If this is going to be an issue for you, for any projects you're building or testing with, then you're probably better staying with the beta for now, unless you want to go for the weight of actually upgrading and getting into it. One key interesting fact is that almost everything you saw at the HoloLens launch and a lot of the new projects and solutions which Microsoft are building are also now being built with the Microsoft Mixed Reality Toolkit. A lot of this is how it's engaging and going forward and making sure the fact that they're effectively using what they sow, or reaping what they sow even, so that they are ensuring that they're finding issues and things first that better engage and evangelize the customers that Microsoft are targeting with the Mixed Reality Toolkit. It's not going to be a simple upgrade itself, not too onerous, but obviously, this is still technically in pre-release format. There's still lots of things going to change, and with fingers crossed from RC1 to any other candidates to the final release, we shouldn't see any new big changes. But if you're going from the actual beta to the new release, yeah, things have changed around, and you're going to have to test the landscape out in your project before really committing to going forward with it. Now, the best advice is if you're coming from the beta 2, then we recommend that you delete the old Mixed Reality Toolkit folders and then import the new assets fresh. Don't worry about all the versioning and linking that's in your project. All the same asset IDs and GUIDs that Unity uses for identifying the projects have stayed the same, no matter where they've moved around to, so they shouldn't affect your project too much. The main thing that will affect your project are things like namespace changes or files that might have been renamed or things that have just simply moved around. For anyone's looking to build a new HoloLens 2 project, don't worry about it. Meet all the prerequisites, get the toolkit installed, and off you fly. And all the new documentation and demos, and there's an upcoming Academy course which is going to walk you through building these projects. Starting fresh as well, no issues, just make sure you've got the actual latest Insider build. The main issue you're going to have is if you're coming from the whole toolkit, it's like with the beta, it's a case of you can have them side by side and transition yourself across easily, and Microsoft have actually in fact published a guide to upgrading from the whole toolkit, which you should see on the link here. Alright, so going a bit more in depth what's new, obviously this is all focused around the HoloLens 2. This is where most of the new features are coming from. So as you saw for the launch, if you haven't, look at it already. So obviously is that we're having new hands and eyes support. The hand support will support predominantly the HoloLens 2 hand tracking, but it will also be able to support other hands-based tracking systems available. We'll have eye tracking for being able to interact and use eyes to improve your user experience when they're working within your project, as demonstrated again at the launch. A few of the sort of low-hanging fruit that came through is that there's a new simulation framework. This is great for simulating hands, great for simulating eyes, and a few other little diagnostic tools and things thrown in. We've added GLTF support, so we can actually use the models that come from the platform. Honestly, that's still being tweaked and refined, and it doesn't have like animations and things in it yet, but it's a work in progress. They should be there for the release, and there's a whole load of new demonstrations for some of the new features, which is worth checking out, especially if you're starting out fresh. Now, if you hadn't seen it before, just to really whet your appetite when you look at these things, one of the Microsoft team have already published a nice little example scene, which is using the example scenes in the Holo Toolkit, but giving you like a nice video to run through. So if we look at this, nice and short, quick and easy. So here you can see like the finger and hand interactions for working with UX controls. A lot of the UX controls have been revamped and updated to work with more precise tracking, clicking in interactions, as well as placement. You can see the hand simulation, so where you're simulating or viewing your hand, but there's also a full track simulator. We can use keys to move your hands as well to make your life a little bit easier. A lot of these things there to pick and choose. Also, the bounding box and the two-handed controls have all been updated to work with hands, as have the grip mechanics. And if you really want a really large cup of coffee, HoloLens 2 is the place to be. And you can see now this is running to the end now. There's a lot of little extra demos and things have all thrown in there. So all the pre-existing controls that you might have seen with the interactables have all been radically enhanced for working with HoloLens 2 and hand tracking as well. So that's enough talking. Let's actually switch over to Unity and have a look at what this really looks like. So here we are in Unity. This has currently got the pre-existing beta installed. If you look around these scenes, you'll see a lot of familiar places where things are. So your camera settings, boundary settings, diagnostics. You've also got the input system profile, which got the focus pointer and things like that. And I'll call this out because it has radically changed. The places where devices and things like that were registered were all in a specific area, and this was also the same area you could use for extending and building your own services if you so wished. That's what that looks like. Now if I'm going to upgrade, as I said, the best thing to do is to remove the old beta. And once that's gone, we simply go in Assets, Import, Custom, and download the new Foundation RC1 package. So once that's opened, basically just import everything that's in here. This includes all the foundation, all the core features that come with the toolkit, including the base services, including some of the new enhancements and like the input simulation and all things that are in there. Once you've got used to this, you can also then tailor that to your project to see what exactly you want to pull in and what you want to leave behind, just to meet the actual use cases that your project needs to deliver on. Okay, so once that's imported, initially you're not going to see much difference, just the way the folders are set up. And you can see it's the same toolkit, same setup. I've not had to change anything. And if we go and copy and customize this, we'll see a few little subtle differences. So there's been a few more extra warnings and things set up here. Noticeably the fact that if you look at each of these areas where it has a profile, there's now a preview of the configuration behind that profile, so you don't have to just open it, you can just preview it and look around. If we look at this extension services now, you'll notice it's actually empty because all the devices and all the input classes and things you're going to use have now been moved into the actual input configuration because that was more of a key place to put it. So anything to do with input was all moved there, this is where the main area changes. If we go and clone the input system, as we showed in the previous video, there are new cloning screens which help you to further customize or change your project as you're building it and even give it a specific name of what you want. changing these settings whichever way you want, whether you're going to use the existing ones, we're going to clone new ones, and just for simplicity's sake I'm just going to say clone them all. I'm starting my new clone army and it's going to begin with configuration. You might notice there's always hand tracking configuration here, we'll come to that a little bit later. So in here, now we look in the input system, you see some of the big major changes. So devices and input are now basically called data providers. This is anything in the system that's going to give input or data to the framework for you then to consume and use throughout the framework in your product. So there's a nice little subtle difference there, and also they're no longer just a fixed set of things. We can add more providers if you wish, remove them, configure them. Specifically, each one has the option to have its own configuration if it needs it. So for areas like the input simulation, it has its own configuration to drive the simulation. And same with the other devices, they'll have the same capability to actually have their own config if they wish. Let's just close all those down. So you can see here in the preview for the input simulation service, you can change how simulation will work, how you can now control the camera through keys, or control hand simulation through keys, or eye simulation. You get the picture. There's lots of simulation in here to better help you in the editor experience for playing around these things, as it's pretty much expected from day one. Almost no one's going to have a device. So like back in the HoloLens 1, we got the simulator and things like that, which is great. You can build, deploy, but then it's a struggle to run through. Microsoft have made it now that it's all available direct in the editor as you're building them, just to make life a little bit easier. Sort of one of the #1 feedbacks they had from their internal projects when they're trying to accelerate development. Most of the settings themselves haven't changed, except obviously with the new addition of the hand tracking, where we have set up for how we control in simulation what are joints, what are palms, what are fingers, meshes, lots of different things they can do there. Now if I just go back to the default one here, you can see here that we've got set up for some prefabs for hand joints, gizmos, axes, and so on and so forth, which will come in very useful if you're actually going to use the system. Go back here, and from a configuration aspect, that's pretty much it. To see anything else, realistically, what we also need to do is to actually pull in the actual examples package. And the examples package contains two things, which it always has done. Is one are mini little demonstrations. Now these are small, throwaway, just to show you how a feature works, examples. Any code that's in there should be just for that little demonstration, it's not meant for implementation. The rest is that you will get from the actual SDK or the framework itself to deliver those features. So it's just showing you simple ways to do it. The examples, which are still incoming, are mini projects or full systems that you'll be able to say, well, if I wanted to build a Mark My Postbox augmented reality app and I wanted to use virtual interactions for how to get there with the map so I can see where I'm going, that would be more of a full project rather than a little demonstration of showing you samples. So the examples installed, we can now go browse through them, and you can see this library is growing steadily. And unlike the Holo Toolkit, where there was a lot of complaints about the fact that there are certain things only in an example or a demo, taking it out of there and putting it somewhere proved very difficult. One of the foundations for the Mixed Reality Toolkit is these are literally throwaway demos. They're just there to say this is how we've implemented it, but using the components of the framework itself. So you shouldn't need to copy or recreate scripts from these demos. They're literally just pick up throwaway code to just show you something, and all broken up. So there are audio examples, setting for the boundary, the nice little diagnostic scenes. But obviously we're looking here now for the release candidate and what's new. And I highly recommend if you can, browse through this and see what would be useful to you. So there's like an entire eye tracking scenes here, and you can see there's several here to make sure that you can easily get around them. Now if we look at the scenes here, so we got, get rid of that one. Nice little sample scene here where we can look around and use eye tracking, and this will basically allow you to look at what's going on in there. If I actually open the root scene, I can see these all. Now, one thing to be aware of, and you'll see this in a few, is that the team has taken it upon themselves to actually use TextMesh Pro as sort of the default text rendering engine. So if you've not used TextMesh Pro before, then I suggest reading up it. If you have issues with using TextMesh Pro, most of the requirements for this are simply using the demos and some of the SDK components. So if you really have an issue with them, you can just avoid using those. It's not a mandatory requirement for having the project, just for some of the samples and things that we've got in there. So here you can see this is actually also a multi-scene setup. So one of the other asks that we're talking about with a lot of projects and teams is how to use the Mixed Reality Toolkit in multiple scenes. Now a lot of the little demos are geared up in that way to show you those things as well. So they're not just showing you simple little features, they're also showing you full examples. If we try running, say, this eye tracking example, we can look around now because it's going to use simulation framework. I can move around, see what's there. Look, there's like nice little menu buttons and things. You can play around with this to your heart's content. And if we go on to something more interesting, sort of the hand tracking, you can see there's several examples here, including the main one, which was the actual demo scenes that were used on stage for the launch. All of the assets that you saw on launch, all the different sliders, the piano keyboards and different things, they've all been brought into the toolkit. So everything that Microsoft is building is being made available for you. And again, I encourage you to try playing around these things to see how they work and how they work for you. Just to see how they've been implemented using the toolkit within these little sample scenes for recreating in your own. And the rest are pretty much the same. So feel free to browse, go through it and enjoy. That's the new Mixed Reality Toolkit Release candidate. I highly encourage you to download not just the foundational package but also the demo scenes, because they have got a wealth of things in there set up, ready to fly, ready to go. Have a look at the new configurations, see how they're set up, how you can customize different interactions, different things to accelerate your development workflow, especially using the new simulation controls. And this, by all means, is not the end of the journey. This is just release candidate 1. This is the first separate release. There are still several features Microsoft are implementing, but from this point forward, they're all additive. So the upgrade process will be a lot smoother and a lot easier. And there are still some extra new features which are still incoming. So watch this space. Get invested into the Mixed Reality Toolkit and start building your mixed reality solutions, whether it's going to be for Microsoft hardware or OpenVR. We hope you enjoy your journey.